Hey fellas, before we get into the video, I'd like to quickly state that I'm not advocating for or encouraging the doxing, targeting, harassment, or bullying of any individuals by mentioned or featured in this particular video. This is an opinion piece of my particular commentary on the subject matter, however controversial it may be. So, while I quickly say it, let's go ahead and start the show. Oh shit! Wait, what the fuck? Why the fuck isn't this thing reloading? I should have 120 rounds left. Insufficient funds? Are you fucking serious? You have to pay every time you want to reload? What kind of stupid ass bullshit is that? Oh shit! Hey man, look, please, don't shoot! I don't have any more funds in my e-account. I can't afford to shoot you anymore.
Credit card accepted. Thank you for choosing Eat Ass Games.
Whoa! Hey, what's good, everybody? Just ran back next to LCS, but something else. You know, I heard some very troubling news yesterday. Alright, as I was scrolling through Twitter, I was about to make the video last night, but, you know, I decided to wait a little bit, because sometimes when you wait, you actually get to formulate a better opinion. Maybe you find some newfound information that will impact your, you know, perspective on things. I'd just like to ask you a little bit of a question before we even continue. Beat Saber, Cuphead, Among Us, Fall Guys, Genshin Impact. What do these games all have in common? Well, they're all made on Unity, using the Unity engine, of course. And Unity is a game developer program, okay? It's sort of geared more towards indie developers for its ease of use and relatively, like, cheap by comparison to other, like, game engines. Doesn't require that much know-how to get into it. And there's a lot of assets that are sort of available on demand that you don't have to make yourself. Now, here's the important thing. I'd like to make one distinction, and I sort of have a vested interest on the performance of not only Unity as a program, but also as a company, because I don't know if you all know this, but VRChat here, it runs on the Unity engine, okay? Unity is basically the conduit, the proxy that gets avatars and worlds into the game, okay? All the little features, the textures, the model, the shaders, you know, any of the particle effects and shit like that, like those fires behind me, that is all requiring Unity to work, okay? As in, people have to go into like a 3D modeling program like Blender or Maya. They need to make the avatar. The avatar has to be rigged and properly textured and things like that. It has to have topology that is good enough for textures to be put on top, gets ported into Unity, you make some final touch-ups, boom, you log in, you basically, like, you know, put it right into the game, you upload it to your account, and from that point onwards, depending on what options you select, you can make it publicly available for everybody to, like, clone off of you, or you can make the world publicly available so that people will actually see it and be able to visit the world and just hang out there independent of you actually being there. So, obviously, Unity is kind of a big deal. On top of which, various like VTubers out there have actually used Unity to like facilitate the animations that go into their works, you know, whether they're live streaming or making a video or shit like that. There's a lot of people riding high hopes on Unity because it's free, essentially, if you have a personal license, okay? And like the only basic threshold really in like Unity costs you money is if you have the expectation of making $100,000 more, you know, in like about 12 months time span. And that's pretty reasonable, okay? Because if it's like $100,000 or less, then you pretty much get Unity for free. All the capabilities here, everything that you can sort of put your time and effort into, it's for free. Now, if you're curious as to how much like a license would cost if you're more of like a professional or you're operating a business, it's $2,040 per year. And that's doable for a business, okay? It's a little bit steep for an average Joe like you or me. Unless like that's pretty much all you do. Every time you get off of work, you get right on the computer, you start hammering out your little game, or maybe like you're one of those like gifted students that every time you get out of school, you just hop on the fucking thing, you start hammering out a game. Different people will have different needs and different wants and different requirements as to what they expect to get out of Unity. But it is, in spite of like all the terrible things that sort of I've heard of from various VRChat people out there, that it's a hot, buggy mess that works with this sort of nebulous mysteriousness to it, that you don't quite know why it breaks when certain things don't work. You know, for all of the quibbles and all of the gripes that you might have with the program, it's actually a pretty good program, especially for the price tag of free. Well, you know, it's always a good sign when somebody actually comes out. They make a little bit of an announcement on Twitter, and they're basically like upfront and personal, okay? They put all their cards on the table, and they basically just full-on admit to your face, yes, this is a price increase, but it will only affect small subset of current Unity editor users. Yeah, I'll believe that when pigs fly. Unity announced that they're going to be rolling out a subscription plan, not something that Adobe hasn't already done, and introducing what's called a runtime fee. Definitely something that Unity's never done, or I should say Adobe. What the fuck is a runtime fee, you might ask? It refers to a game's runtime, as in, like, how long it's been sort of in existence, that it's been a successful title, sees distribution amongst various customers out there. So, with this sort of runtime fee, it's supposedly only going to affect those that actually release a successful title and are generating revenue beyond certain dollar thresholds outlined in their blog. We're going to get into that in a little bit, not right now. I guess you just gotta let the fat grow on the cow before you send it off to slaughter, right? But you can imagine how people reacted on social media. Because the implication of this sort of pricing model was that every time that a game developer had one of their games installed, it didn't matter like whether the customer installed on their PC, their laptop, their Steam Deck, their Steam Dick, whatever you say, the game dev's going to get charged for that, okay? And this all starts January 2024. So, supposedly, this isn't going to affect anybody retroactively, but I don't really believe that for a hot second. If the game's, like, actually popular enough, has been in existence for long enough, it would have to affect them retroactively, given, like, what the actual pricing model is, okay? And, you know, what I noticed is that as soon as they made that sort of, like, pricing model release, that they released the information, the deets on, like, you know, them releasing this new price model, I noticed that Unreal was pushing its, like, you know, advertisements pretty hard, okay, on both YouTube, Twitter, various other places. I guess they saw an opportunity to sort of, like, make bank at Unity's expense, because Unity is pretty much shooting themselves in the foot. Both feet, in fact, because, like, you know, people are already floating the idea, hey, if you want to deal with this, like, runtime fee, why don't you just run your ass over to G.Engine, okay? We're not going to assess you like that. Hell, our pricing plans are pretty agreeable, alright? You're going to love it here. So it just kind of, like, really has to beg the question, why now? And obviously, nobody on Twitter liked it, okay? Basically, what's also interesting is that they already seem to have known that there was going to be fallout from all this, because they sort of like quietly removed a GitHub repository. The GitHub repository was sort of a way for devs to like track license changes with their license that they held, but they basically removed that GitHub repository. They updated the license already, and it removed a clause that the game dev can use their own terms of service when they, like, you know, with the version that like they ship the game with. But now, the insistence is that the games already shipped out need to pay for, like, the new fees that they've introduced in this new price change, like, increase. And, like, the basic question that everybody was asking on Twitter was just, like, how are these installs going to be tracked? And the response rate, I don't know what tool they hired to be their PR guy, whoever's operating their Twitter account. They basically ended up just copying and pasting answers because they got tired of like actually answering people organically, like actually typing out a response. They would just copy and paste. They would just copy pasta shit. All right. And like the two most common like responses that I saw was, we leverage our own proprietary data model so that you can appreciate that we won't go into a lot of detail, but we believe it gives an accurate determination of the number of times the runtime is distributed for a given project. Which is a load of horseshit. I mean, that doesn't say anything. That's like, you owe us, but we're not going to tell you how we came to the conclusion of how much you owe us. We're not going to go into those details, okay? We're not going to go into the details of, like, you know, the actual model itself of what you actually owe, or how it's going to be tracked, or how it's going to be monitored, how it's going to be calculated on the invoice. We're just going to invoice you, and you're on the hook for this amount. So, obviously, a lot of game devs were kind of borderline outraged and panicked. And, like, you know, the other response I kept saying was, we do already have fraud detection practices on our ads technology, which is solving a similar problem. So we will leverage that know-how as a starting point. We recognize that users will have concerns about this, and we will make available a process for them to submit their concerns to our fraud compliance teams. Yeah, I'm sure people were just imbued with confidence upon hearing that. Nope. Everybody was calling for a full-out boycott of Unity. They're basically hoping that Unity as a company fails. They were basically saying, well, you know what? Fuck you, Unity. We're going to be jumping ship, okay? We are not going to be sticking around to see how this ends, all right? We are just out of here, okay? We're going to go GDOT. We're going to go to Unreal. We're going to go to any other fucking game developer software out there that's available to us, and you all can take this fucking pricing model and shove it up your ugly ass. Now, that might be a little bit of an overstatement, but at the same time, even Gary Newman, and he's like the developer of Rust, even he chimed in. He was one of like the louder voices in the room that sort of like caught my eye. But he basically ran the numbers based on the pricing model that was released, and he estimates that he probably would have paid like something like $410,000, about $40K per year, if like this whole pricing model was implemented. So that would equate to like a monthly cost of about $2,517. So, while this isn't, like, unreasonable, it does, like, sort of beg the question. Why are they taxing people on install? Like, it's per install. It's not like, there doesn't necessarily need to be a sale attributed to the game. Hell, the game could be released as, like, part of a demo. Maybe it's a charity copy that you give to, like, an orphanage out there or something like that, as, like, a pity donation. It doesn't take anything like that into account. It only reflects upon installations, okay? And various people were getting like pretty wise to this. They're just like, oh, so you're saying that per installation, does that mean that we can basically bankrupt any game dev out there that we don't personally like? All right, people, man your battle stations. Go ahead and get your PCs, all right? We're gonna fucking bankrupt this bitch into the fucking ground. You've been training your whole life for this moment. Don't fuck it up. Like, it was crazy to see how people were just like speculating about this whole thing. Now, some people, the more reasonable people in the room, they think that this is really just like a sort of slam the door in your face sales tactic. As in, you roll out an idea so egregious that nobody in their right mind will ever accept it, let alone take you seriously after the fact. And so that, like, basically you can walk that back and offer a more reasonable, like, offer in comparison. But regardless of which direction they go, if they actually walk this back or, like, stick to their guns and say, this is how Unity is going to be from here on out, Unity's reputation is already going to be tarnished, all right? People are already calling Unity dog water, and they've already called it dog water for a while now because of the actions of one particular individual out there. Do you know how that individual is? It's their current president and CEO of Unity Software, Inc., John Ristiello. I probably mispronounced that. I don't give a toss because nobody likes him or his Bolsonaro-looking ass. If you don't know who Bolsonaro is, he was the president of Brazil. Okay, he had a corrupt-ass administration when he was in office, so nobody likes him either. And it's so uncanny, right? If you hold up two pictures side by side and compare the two, it's so uncanny. It's almost like they were separated at birth. One went on to become the corrupt leader of a fucking corrupt company or country, and the other went on to become leader of like a corrupt company. So, a match made in heaven, you might say. Anyway, John's only major issues is that he was actually the former CEO of EA, and I have never liked EA, okay? Like, in the history of gaming, I was never a big fan of EA. My perception of EA was they were always making sports games, which, unless it's Mario Strikers, Mario Golf, Mario Baseball, or shit like that, I'm not interested, okay? I had a few laughs back in the day on the GameCube, but after that, it's just like, you play one sports game, you pretty much play them all. My perception was that that's all that EA really did, and I equated EA. I never understood what EA stands for. I don't even care to. I consider it eat-ass games, okay? Because that's what you're going to fucking be doing after you buy one of their games. He basically, his sort of mentality, right? His perspective, his attitude towards game devs is that they're all fucking idiots unless they start making games with full monetization in mind, chasing that almighty dollar, because that's all that matters to him, is making the green. All right, he thought that they were missing out on a perpetual gold mine in bilking players out of just about all the money they had through microtransactions, loot crates. Didn't matter, any way to get gamers to spend even more money over on top of the price of the games they already paid. So he's not exactly somebody I would call ethical, you know? He's not somebody I would call reasonable. And to sort of emphasize this fact, he actually suggested the idea of charging $1 or like some sort of like, you know, nominal fee that every time a player actually needed to reload in a game like Battlefield. You know, could you imagine how much of a train wreck that would be? Okay, gamers aren't exactly swimming in cash. They might spend a lot of their disposable income on games, but that doesn't mean they're rich. And, like, if you're going to try to impoverish them that way, it really seems that John just wants to, like, fucking nickel and dime his way and basically be a racketeer in the gaming industry by, like, fucking charging game developers out there above and beyond what they should actually be paying into Unity as a game development tool. He wants to fucking bilk them for everything they're worth. And his rationalization is that if he bilks the game developers for everything they're worth, they're just going to push off the cost to, like, the end user, the customer, all right? Someone's got to pay in this equation, okay? And John's going to make sure that's not going to be him or Unity. And Unity basically, like, I'm just going to imagine, like, him with that shitty grin on his face, sitting down at a board meeting, and people are just sort of like, how do we make Unity more profitable as a company? Oh, I know! Let's go ahead and charge more and do less! Because in this whole price model increase announcement, I haven't seen anything as far as new features or, like, you know, new things that you can do with Unity, let alone updates or shit like that on top of what would already be considered maintenance updates. I didn't see nothing like that. So I can only imagine that John's hoping to, like, make above and beyond, like, a profit. If this doesn't work, I think he's already got himself a little bit of a game plan for that, because he's been selling a lot of shares of Unity out there, okay? He hasn't bought any back. He's only been selling. In fact, the most recent sort of, like, benchmark was that he sold 2,000 shares of the company for a grand total of, can you guess it, kids? 50,610 shares this year alone. Why is he selling so many shares of the company? And, like, there's sort of, like, some speculation that this might all be, like, insider trading. As in, he knows something that other people don't, therefore he's more inclined to share sales, like, you know, shares of the company. And he's been doing this for the past 5 years. And this is all got to be, like, insider trading, right? People have actually called the SEC to, like, fucking investigate his ass. If you don't know who the SEC are, that's the Securities Exchange Commission, okay? If you're getting into the stock market, you're going to need to know about the SEC and the regulations they put forth, but I wouldn't be surprised if John Riccitiello is, like, breaching all of those, like, to get to where he is now. And yeah, selling shares of a company, you know, like, especially like Unity, that's obviously generating some fast income, some fast cash for the company, but at the same time, you got to wonder, how much of that is winding up in his back pocket? And is he trying to, like, basically sell out enough shares that he can sort of see the end of Unity coming? Because he doesn't seem like one of those people that really is out there for the people, okay? Unity, the reputation in my eyes of Unity is that this was a game development tool, a engine for indie devs out there. It's created some fantastic fucking games. I already mentioned Cuphead. I already mentioned Genshin Impact. I've already mentioned, like, you know, Among Us, Fall Guys, and various other games like that. It's going to be a fucking tragedy if John basically runs this game, like, you know, the company into the fucking ground just because, like, he wants to make bank on the backs of gamers and game devs out there. And already, like, you know, the results of all this, even just the suggestion that this is the direction they're going to be going into, has not been good, okay? People are already calling for, like, you know, finding alternatives out there and basically boycotting Unity, okay? And I've already sort of been aware that Unity hasn't been doing the greatest, all right? And it has nothing to do with, like, the open market, that there's sort of been, like, a downturn, like, you know, as far as their market performance over the past 5 years. It more has to do with the fact that, like, a while back, there was sort of like a troubling news story that I came across. I just stumbled upon it because, you know, Unity, if I see Unity like out and about as like part of the news, obviously it's going to catch my notice because I'm an avid VRChat player. Okay, I play VRChat here. I love the game. I love socializing here. I love making videos here. I love doing a little bit of everything here. And if Unity as a program, and by extension the company that makes the program, is impacted, that's going to impact me eventually. So I had a vested interest, sort of like pay attention. Already, Unity merged with a company out there that was sort of like geared towards bundling and distributing malware. Why would they do that? And if you're curious as to like what the company's name is, it's IronSource. IronSource developed a particular brand of software called Iron Core. And basically what it would do is it would bundle software installations. So it would take what you're actually interested in, whatever it might be, and pair it with a bunch of like junkware that you weren't interested in getting, but you'd be offered that. It's shit that like your grandma or maybe your Uncle Bob would fall for because they're not really thinking when it's offered. It's like, oh, Reg Clean Pro or driver support. That'd be pretty good. I do need to clean my registry. Better install that. But if you did install them, suddenly you got a whole shit ton of bloatware. Your computer started running like shit, and you get these annoying ass toolbars that you just can't seem to get rid of. You know, the programs were considered so obnoxious that even basic bitch antivirus software like Windows Defender or Malwarebytes would actually prevent Iron Core from even being installed in the first place. Alright, so you gotta wonder, IronSource, what is Unity's interest in IronSource? Because it definitely factors into their latest and greatest game plan as to, like, charging game devs up the wazoo for fucking installs. Basically, what, like, the other things that IronSource actually made was, like, a fake installer for Windows. Basically, they made, like, a Windows version of Snapchat, but really all it was just, like, an Android emulator. And it's called BlueStacks, which, anytime that you installed it, you guessed it, you got adware, bloatware, junkware, whatever. For whatever reason, Unity thought that IronSource was perfect because, like, you know, they paid $4.4 billion to facilitate this merger. Now, obviously, when they came in, they fired a bunch of employees and, like, you know, sort of, like, aligned it more towards Unity, but I'm beginning to believe that this is, like, they sold it as this. They basically marketed the move as being beneficial to Unity, and by extension, game devs out there, because it would enable those same game devs to be able to, like, monetize their software from the get-go. Okay, they could basically build their game with monetization in mind. Similar to how John Ristiello had envisioned that game devs that don't do that are fucking idiots, because John Ristiello is a fucking dick. Anyway, supposedly that was the selling point. That was the rationalization. That was the explanation that Unity offered to the general public. I suspect that, like, anytime that you install Unity from this point onwards, there's going to be, like, some sort of a monitoring program that's going to detect how many times you've installed something. Now, whether this is ethical, legal, or anything like that, a lot of people are already questioning, like, you know, the validity of all these claims and, like, how much Unity can actually carry through on and, like, announcing this whole pricing model change. It's going to be very interesting to see how many people jump ship, just as a visceral reaction to this whole thing. And more importantly, it's also going to interest me, like being a VRChat player, to see if Unity, or I should say VRChat and the dev team, decide they're going to align themselves with another, like, gaming program software out there. Because Unity, if this is, like, the direction that Unity is going to go, that's going to impact VRChat eventually. It's going to impact you, it's going to impact me, it's going to impact the ability to make this world, it's going to impact my ability to upload this avatar, anything of the sort. It's going to impact just about everything that we sort of foresee. How long this is going to take to fruition, as in, like, how long do we have to sort of wait for the impacts to be felt and known to us? Well, you already know. It's going to be January 1st, 2024. Supposedly not going to affect us retroactively, but it might as well, because some of those games out there have been around for a while, like Genshin Impact. So it remains to be seen, but before we all go, let's just go ahead and take a look at their pricing model. Like, basically the thresholds, the benchmarks. They said, oh, you're not going to have to pay us unless you reach these benchmarks. Because I don't buy that for a second. Real quick, I think this is only really going to hurt indie game devs from this point onwards, okay? This isn't necessarily going to hurt the AAA titles out there, because AAA titles, I don't think they necessarily use Unity for, like, that purpose. I think, like, this is going to honestly, like, hurt various indie devs, people that are passionate about making a good game. They got a good idea, they put it to practice, and they actually make themselves a decent game. However, they get, like, eaten alive through fees that Unity is introducing now, and they're not making bank above and beyond, like, you know, profits, unless it's a very good game. They could be just struggling to get by, and suddenly Unity decides to roll out this pricing model, and they're not even going to be transparent on how they're going to determine how many times somebody installed your game. So it's just like, what the fuck, man? Now we get a chance to hear it from the horse's mouth. So this is a little bit of a blog that was distributed to actually give people an idea on how much they would actually owe Unity if they actually opted for their services. And this is the document that sort of generated all the outrage, alright? And, like, there's actually a clarification on this. So this was released September 12th, and on September 13th, it was actually given further clarification. Basically, the semblance of transparency that you knew how fucked over you'd actually be if you opted to use Unity. But anyway, Unity plan pricing and packaging updates. Doesn't that have a nice little ring to it? Effective January 1st, 2024, we will introduce a new Unity runtime fee that's based on game installs. We already knew that. We will also add cloud-based asset storage, Unity DevOps tools, and AI at runtime at no extra cost to Unity subscription plans this November. So I'm going to have to walk back what I said before. Obviously, I was bitching and complaining about the fact that there was like no real, tangible new features that would be attractive enough to warrant this kind of a change. But still, does that really make up for like the principle of the matter? That it's just like per install, a game dev is going to be on the hook for like the expenses that they're going to basically charge for. And they're basically going to do this without having any idea how many copies of the game were actually installed by the end user. As many of you know, the Unity engine is in fact two substantial software components, the Unity editor and the Unity runtime. The Unity runtime is code that executes on player devices and makes made with Unity games work at scale, with billions of monthly downloads. We are introducing a Unity runtime fee that is based upon each time a qualifying game is downloaded by an end user. We chose this because each time a game is downloaded, the Unity runtime is also installed. Also, we believe that an initial install-based fee allows creators to keep the ongoing financial gains from player engagement, unlike a revenue share. Because you're really caring about those devs, right? Thresholds for revenue and installs. Games qualifying for the Unity runtime fee after two criteria have been met. The game has passed a minimum revenue threshold in the last 12 months. And 2. The game has passed a minimum lifetime install count. We set high revenue and game install thresholds to avoid impacting those who have yet to find scale. Meaning, they don't need to pay the fee until they have reached significant success. Like I said before, gotta let fat grow on that cow before you send it off to slaughter, right? Only games that meet the following thresholds qualify for the Unity runtime fee. Unity Personal and Unity Plus. Those that have made $200,000 or more in the last 12 months and have at least 200,000 lifetime game installs. That doesn't exactly factor in how much the game is being sold for, let alone if like the game installation actually had a purchase to it. That is just one component to all this that is generating so much outrage. It's like, how do you know that the end user actually bought the game when they installed it? You know what I mean? Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise. Those that have made $1 million or more in the last 12 months and have at least 1 million lifetime game installs. Still, it doesn't factor in the relative cost of the game because some games are a little bit more demanding to actually program and implement than some other games out there. You don't have any idea how much the game is like being charged for, or you don't care. You only care about the fucking installs. That's all I'm seeing with that, okay? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it really seems like they're focusing on install. In fact, let's start a new gaming, like, you know, a new drinking game right here, right now. Every time I say install from here on out, I want you to take a shot. Don't get hammered, okay? Drink responsibly. Flexibility and discounts for Unity Personal, Pro, and Enterprise. With this new policy, as of January 1st, 2024, we will offer Unity Personal to anyone regardless of how much revenue they make to provide more flexibility in how creators manage their licenses. Once a game passes the revenue and install thresholds, the studio would pay a small fee for each install. Okay, a flat fee. I mean, that's not bad. It could be at scale, as in it exponentially grows the more that it gets implemented. To adjust for scale, Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise subscribers will be eligible for volume discounts that rapidly reduce the per install costs of the Unity runtime fee. This means that in addition to the other benefits, what benefits? The cost of Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise licenses can be offset by the savings as the game grows. Finally, we structured our fees so that they take into account the variability of game monetization between more established regions like North America and Europe versus emerging gaming regions such as India. A breakdown of the pricing and discount structure is below. See the FAQ for additional details. Okay, so revenue threshold, Unity Personal and Unity Plus. $200,000 and 200,000 copies over the course of its lifetime. Unity Pro, $1 million and 1 million copies. That's like factoring like $1 a copy. You know, I don't know. That doesn't, that's not, that's like bothering me. The fact that like they simplified it to the point where there's no taking into account like the complexity of the game, how much the game is actually being charged for. It's like a one install to like dollar ratio as far as like, you know, the thresholds they're establishing for the dollar amount versus the actual installations. Unity Enterprise, 1 million to 1 million, just like Unity Pro. So where do they differ? Okay, so you go down here a little bit, calculate the fee. If your game meets both thresholds, tiered rates apply and will be charged once per new install. Now, here's what's bothering me. Notice that it's a flat rate of 20 cents per install. As in, like, the less successful game that only maybe got installed 200,000 times, it's being assessed, like, more than, say, like, somebody that sold 1 million copies of their game. Or, I can't even say sold. Had 1 million copies of their game installed, because, you know, there's never a proof of purchase. You don't know for a fact if there was a purchase tied to that installation. Hell, it could just be Frank keeps, like, you know, reinstalling Windows 10, has to reinstall the game after the fact. You ain't gonna get no money out of that. Although, Unity gets to fucking assess the game dev if this goes through. But, you know, I guess it kind of makes sense in some regards, but still, this is really gonna hurt indie game devs. Like, the 20 cents per install, like, at 200,000 copies or 200,000 installs, like, seriously, that seems like you're really fucking over the game dev. Okay, notice how if like they're rewarding, I guess, good performance, okay, I suppose, given the fact that they're like cutting them a little bit of slack under Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise. But like, this is like a fuck you to indie devs out there, okay? This is not like geared towards making money hand over fist off of the backs of like AAA games. This is like, this seems strangely predatory towards people that are just trying to make a good game here. And they're, like, not really, like, you know, the biggest studio around, so they can only make sort of a humble offering, and are trying to make, like, you know, something off their creation. I don't know, that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Fee reduction for use of Unity services. Qualifying customers may be eligible for credits toward the Unity runtime fee, based on the adoption of Unity services beyond the editor, such as Unity Gaming Services or Unity LevelPlay. We're actually going to talk a little bit about Unity LevelPlay, so that's why I sort of hesitated when I saw that, because this is a little bit of a linchpin, and you're going to see what I mean in just a little bit. Mediation for mobile and ad-supported games. This program enables deeper partnership with Unity to succeed across the entire game lifecycle. Please reach out to your account manager to learn more. How about don't and say you did? New services and tools. No seat price changes. This November, we will update some of the Unity subscription plans to add extra value. What extra value? New capabilities include better collaboration, Unity DevOps, cloud-based asset management, Unity Asset Manager, role and access controls, team administration, and the ability to add AI functionality at runtime. Unity Sympathies. These new tools and services will come with no increase in seat prices as we continue to help creators adapt to the growing complexity of game development. Here's a breakdown. All Unity plans will get Unity Sympathies, which enables you to embed a running AI mode model in the Unity runtime instead inside your game or application without needing to pay additional cloud compute costs or introducing latency. Unity Personal will include the Unity Asset Manager, free tier, 10 gigabytes storage total, a maximum of 3 Unity DevOps seats featuring 5 gigabytes of storage and 200 Windows build minutes, and team administration base roles. Unity Pro will include the Unity Asset Manager, 50 gigabytes of storage per seat, pooled for a team to share, along with an equal number of Unity DevOps seats featuring 5 gigabytes of storage and 200 Windows build minutes. Team administration tools to manage access will also be included. Oh, that was so nice of you. Including that, man? Oh, man, I couldn't fall asleep tonight if I didn't know that that was included. Unity Enterprise will include the Unity Asset Manager, 120 gigabytes of storage per seat, pooled for a team to share, along with an equal number of Unity DevOps seats with 5 gigabytes of storage and 200 Windows build minutes. Team administration tools, including custom roles and SSO, provide a higher degree of control. Finally, Unity Plus is being retired for new subscribers effective today, September 12, 2023, to simplify the number of plans we offer. Existing subscribers do not need to make immediate action and will receive an email mid-October with an offer to upgrade to Unity Pro for 1 year at the current Unity Plus price. For more information, see the detailed fact, contact Unity support, talk with us on the Unity forums, or contact your local account manager. No, thank you. Thank you for creating with Unity. Yeah, okay. Can I wipe my ass with this web page? Now, obviously, various game devs have come forward to actually release statements attesting to the fact that they felt betrayed, that they felt stabbed in the back, that the change was so far out of left field, it might as well have been just a spontaneously arbitrary decision made by the higher-ups at Unity. Which it was, make no mistake about that, but I'm going to let them speak for themselves, alright? First up was AgroCrabs Gamers. They're the first one I noticed. They're an indie game dev that made Another Crab's Treasure, Going Under, and Subway Midnight. Hey gamers! Today, Unity, the engine we use to make our games, announced that they'll soon be taking a fee from developers for every copy of the game installed over a certain threshold, regardless of how that copy was obtained. Guess who has a somewhat highly anticipated game coming to Xbox Pass in 2024? That's right! It's us, and a whole lot of other developers out there. That means Another Crab's Treasure will be free to install for the 25 million Game Pass subscribers. If a fraction of those users download our game, Unity could take a fee that puts an enormous dent in our income and threatens the sustainability of our business. And that's before we even think about sales on other platforms, or pirated installs of our game, or even multiple installs by the same user. This decision puts us and countless other studios in a position where we might not be able to justify using Unity for our future titles. If these changes aren't rolled back, we'll be heavily considering abandoning our wealth of Unity expertise we've accumulated over the years and starting from scratch in a new engine, which is really something we'd rather not do. On behalf of the dev community, we're calling on Unity to reverse the latest in a string of short-sighted decisions that seem to prioritize shareholders over their product's actual users. I fucking hate it here. Me too. AgroCrab. Aw, ain't that so cute? Look at that little crab with a knife. Not the first time I've seen crabs holding knives, but here it's actually justified. They're pika pissed. They're not going to take it anymore. And they got a little knife to show for it. But anyway, they're not the only game dev that spoke out on the issue. So Kenny is actually, they make free assets or paid game assets, but they also Make Room, Pixros, Frick Inc., Oopie's Quest, also another indie game developer. But over the last decade, I've consistently endorsed Unity as a great choice for aspiring developers. I've shared examples, sources, tips, and ensured that my game assets were primarily compatible with Unity. It is impossible for me to continue doing this. I can no longer endorse Unity. Unity's recent actions have disappointed both their customers and the entire indie community. Altering their terms to retroactively impose fees on every game created using Unity is unacceptable. While my studio is still tied with Unity due to released games, software, and ongoing projects going forward, I'll focus on the many other game engines, in particular Godot, Unreal Engine, GameMaker, Defold, GDevelop, Construct, and Pico 8. Stay tuned for upcoming starter kits, game assets, and examples for those engines. Dedicated individual. I can respect that. Now, Kinetic Games holds a special place in my heart because they're the makers of Phasmophobia, alright? And when Phasmophobia was first released, it was kind of jank, alright, not gonna lie. But it was honestly a novel concept. Whoever thought that you could be like your own basic Scooby-Doo gang, minus the dog, and like basically investigate houses for like paranormal activity? I thought it was a very unique concept, and imitators would soon follow, but I digress. This is a statement from Kinetic Games. We wish to address the recent changes to Unity's new pricing model, which will now require developers to pay per initial install. This decision has huge implications for us and many others in the industry, and we felt it essential to share our perspective. Game development is a long, intricate process that has careful financial and strategic planning. For games like Phasmophobia, which is already released, as well as those currently under development, our business models were designed around Unity's previously established royalty-free terms. This sudden shift significantly changes and threatens the entire Unity developer community. When Phasmophobia launched in September 2020, its immediate success was a complete surprise. Given our tight budget at the time, had Unity's new pricing model been in effect, we simply wouldn't have been able to pay, especially considering Steam's payment structure, which disperses funds to developers at the end of the following month. Unity's long-standing reputation as a royalty-free, indie-friendly game engine was one of the core reasons we, and countless other developers, chose it over other engines. This decision raises huge concerns about the future direction of the engine. We've been using Unity since the days of Unity 4.0. Since then, there has been a level of trust between developers and Unity. This abrupt shift not only breaks that trust, but also creates a huge amount of uncertainty. There is currently nothing stopping Unity from imposing further changes in the near future. This uncertainty introduces a significant financial risk and unpredictability for all Unity developers. Our primary commitment remains to our community, who have supported us throughout. We will continue to bring you the games we set to make, irrespective of these new challenges we face. The Kinetic Games team. Also dedicated. Again, much respect. Now, as far as Crema goes, Crema, they're the makers of Temtem, which is sort of a Pokemon-inspired game. You can see it in the clip art here, but I'm just going to go ahead and read their statement. We've been using Unity for over 10 years, and it's played a significant role in almost all of our games. However, the recent developments concerning the installation runtime fee have become the tipping point for us. Ever since Unity went public and with the change in leadership under their new CEO, it has been a downhill journey. Each announcement seems to be worse than the previous one, while the engine itself has been lacking in both polish and capabilities. Even if they eventually decide to backtrack on this new fee, we believe that the breach of trust is now too significant. This is especially true after Unity attempted to erase all their old terms of service, clauses that prohibited this change from applying retroactively. Earlier this year, we began learning the ins and outs of a new engine, precisely because we were concerned something like this might happen. We were currently committed to using Unity for Temtem, our previous games, and an upcoming project that is too advanced to change at this point. However, these will be the last games we will develop using Unity. For the sake of the players, the devs, and the whole industry, we sincerely hope that Unity reevaluates this decision and reconsiders the new fee, even if it's too late for us. Yeah, I can see how that would be a shock, let alone outrage. Now, a Grumpy Fox, I believe they're Norwegian. Go ahead and correct me on that one, but they made Lunistis, alright? And Lunistis, it's kind of like a PS1, Sega Saturn looking game where you play as like a Tanuki, and it's honestly like a 3D platformer, so it's kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog. At least the gameplay very much looked like that. But anyway, this is from Grumpy Fox. Well, I guess it's time for me to do one of those serious image posts as well, huh? As you may already have heard from many developers and myself, Unity plans to introduce ridiculously poorly thought out changes to their pricing structure starting January 1st, 2024, implementing a revenue share model based on poorly defined runtime installs and incredibly vague terms of service that threatens the livelihood of many Unity developers. While I belong to the 90% of developers that apparently won't be affected. The huge number of issues, including Unity quietly changing their old terms of service so they can enact changes at any time they see fit, data privacy concerns regarding counting runtime installs, a general lack of transparency how their metrics are supposed to be counted, and the removal of the Unity Plus subscription model is a frankly appalling violation of trust. As such, the development of any upcoming Malicious updates ceases immediately until this decision is fully reverted and the old TOS reinstated. Additionally, should Unity continue down this path without any changes, Malicious will be pulled from every storefront on December 31st, 2023. Meanwhile, even if they revert their decisions, I don't see myself conducting business with Unity for any future projects unless they go above and beyond with fixing this situation, and we'll be looking at alternatives going forward. Can't honestly blame them. Now, Bearded Giant Games. They're also another indie game dev that made Farm Life and Ebony Spire, and they're actually going on to make Ebony Spire 2. However, this kind of puts everything in jeopardy of interrupting their operations, alright? Bearded Giant Games is officially canceling Ebony Spire 2, and all are in-house development projects that use Unity. See? What I tell you. We're moving back to our own tech stack and reviving and modernizing our old engines and tools. Unity has completely severed all the trust we had on proprietary technology, and even if they reverse the decision, the shenanigans they pulled with their terms of service and retroactively applying the new terms does not sit well with us. For client work, we will continue to uphold our clients' requirements and continue the projects that use Unity. However, we will be advising against the use of Unity in all future client collaboration. Takeaway: internally, Unity is not a tool that will power any more Bearded Giant games. So, in stating all of that, obviously, it just emphasizes what I said prior. They felt betrayed, stabbed in the back. They're kind of outraged all this, and they're not going to stick around to see how this all plays out, alright? So it's going to be very interesting to see how Unity can sort of convince them to come back to the platform and use Unity as a program. If they can't, if they don't roll back these changes, then Unity as a company might die. So in spite of everything I've said so far, there's just one way to get out of paying per install, and that's if you use Unity LevelPlay. What the fuck is LevelPlay, you might ask? LevelPlay is a monetization ad stack based program that was actually made by IronSource, but since Unity merged with IronSource, now it's Unity LevelPlay. Definitely explains why Unity merged with IronSource. Now, the obvious problems with LevelPlay is that it requires you to take advantage of full-scale monetization in the release of games, or apps. This seems more geared towards the mobile market. That's kind of intrusive and obtrusive, and it kind of puts people off. I mean, nobody really likes getting hit up with ads to begin with. Now, the reason for all of this is because of the simple fact that Unity seems to be trying to corner the market and kill off its greatest competitor, AppLovin, which is also in the business of making revenue through monetization of apps, especially on the mobile market. Now, what's crazy is that AppLovin already tried to merge with Unity before to avoid direct competition, but that was rejected, strangely enough. Nah, Unity seems to want to do all this in-house through its own efforts and by its own accord, so whoop-de-doo. So where do we all go from here? I'm be real with y'all. This is my prediction, okay, on how things are going to go. If John Ristiello and friends can't make bank on this new pricing model rollout deal, they're already in a position where they can essentially just walk away from all this scot-free. I'm willing to bet that on the chance they can somehow hoodwink the entire gaming industry, they're going to stick to their guns, they are not going to back down, and they're going to ride this through. And they're going to allow Unity to crash and burn for this, and then walk away with what few measly dollars they can after the fact. After they liquidate the company, Unity gets, evaporated, or bought out, or sold, or what have you. They're willing to do that on the chance that they can implement this new pricing model deal. And already, insiders on the inside, supposedly alleged insiders, so take it with a fistful of salt, they've already admitted to the fact that there is no way currently for them to actually be able to track or monitor how many installations of a given game actually get installed out there, out in the wild, or anything like that. There's no way for them to really carry through with the intent of this new pricing model increase. Okay? There's no way for them to know know how many installations have actually occurred. They can only estimate. That's why when people were sort of asking, well, wait a minute, how are you going to keep track of all this shit? They got really lippy and were just sort of like, well, that's proprietary information, okay? We can't release that, but you can rest assured that we know what we're doing. We're going to bill you for it, but not tell you how we came to those calculations. Yeah, go fuck yourself. And like, already, right, John Ristiello, he's making like $22 million as his base salary as a CEO. Okay, he's pretty well off. He's in a position of authority where, you know, he's borderline untouchable. He has no incentive to actually carry through and try to make Unity as a company more successful, more popular, more used by the masses. This fucking, like, harebrained scheme is something that he just probably cooked up based on the fact that he's got sour grapes, that his whole, like, you know, bullet reload dollar, like, you know, microtransaction idea didn't go through at EA. And it really says something that when you work for EA and you were considered too much of a money grubber for EA. Too much of a money grubber for EA, a company that loves loot crates and microtransactions, shit like that, that really says something about you. That really says something about your business practices, okay? Not even EA wanted this guy. Yet somehow, in 2014, somebody got kicked in the head, and they basically said, you know, this John Ristiello guy, we should bring him on board, we should allow him to be head of the company at Unity, and he's going to be good for developers. Alright? You know, his reputation already precedes him, and already people don't like his Bolsonaro-looking ass, so why should we even give him credence now? Why should we let him have the chance to succeed? You know, go ahead and vote with your wallets. You don't have to use Unity. There are other game engines out there. Unreal has been pushing, like, really hard with their advertising, because they already recognize, they smelled blood in the water, right? They smelled an opportunity to make bank at Unity's expense, because Unity has already shot themselves in both feet. Okay? And, like, really, John Ristiello and the board of directors, or whoever the leadership structure is over at Unity, seem like they've sort of aligned themselves away from being the safe bastion and haven for indie game devs out there, to becoming kind of parasitic on the back of Unity itself. And my heart goes out to, like, the employees at Unity. I'm talking about the rank and file, like, Unity employees that just do the mundane day-to-day operations. I feel sorry for them that they have to basically, like, you know, hang at the helm, like, on a sinking ship as all of this is happening. And they're getting lampooned left and right by the general masses that are basically taking their frustration and ire out on them. And already, devs has already made a call. Hey, call for decency. Don't be doing nothing. Don't be going after these people. Already a death threat was levied, so it's just kind of like, people are kind of getting pissed off. They've already been pissed off for the past couple of days. Tensions are already pretty high, and people are already voicing their intent, either boycott Unity, abandon it entirely, seek alternatives, hope for Unity's downfall. So even if all of these, like, changes are, like, pulled back, rolled back, and are no longer going to be implemented, the damage has already been done, okay? It's going to be interesting to see if they actually decide that they're going to basically, like, roll these changes back, take a bite of humble pie, and admit the fact that they fucked up. But honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that, like, John Ristiello, he's willing to play chicken with the market, okay? And what's going to happen is that Unity is going to be the only entity that suffers here. It's going to crash and burn, crumble as a company. No one's going to take it seriously anymore, let alone use it as a viable game engine, and it's just going to fade away into the ether. Meanwhile, John Ristiello gets to walk away with his $22 fucking million and whatever shares he's, like, sold that he personally has, like, ownership of, and basically have himself a golden parachute or a silver parachute. I'm actually kind of curious how many people would benefit if Unity was to fold. If they were to, like, liquidate the company, basically allow it to crash and burn and die, because they've already sold various shares, okay? Presumably, all that revenue that came from the selling of, like, company stock, presumably that went to the acquisition of various companies out there, okay? Acquiring companies through mergers and shit like that, that shit ain't cheap, okay? But I wouldn't be surprised if John and friends, they benefited off that. Maybe scooped off the top a little bit. You know, you don't know. Especially when you got insider trading on the table. Anyway, you know, I'm just kind of, like, mortified at all this because, Unity is a bitch of a program. It is a bitch and a half to learn. You never really know the ins and outs of what Unity can do for you here on VRChat, but I've seen some very compelling examples of like the artistic like expression that people have really poured into either their worlds or their avatars. So the ability is there if you have the mental focus and concentration to do it. But like at the same time, it's going to be all for naught if Unity as a company ceases to exist, and the program will no longer receive support, okay? Every time that you get on Unity, you have to log in with your own personal account, okay? So that there needs to be like server space elsewhere out there to handle the sort of the interface of handling all that traffic, okay? And if the company behind that ceases to exist, then there's not going to be any internal support for anything that you're doing here, so it's going to become like a dead program, essentially. I'm morbidly interested to see how this is going to play out. I'm wondering if like VRChat is even going to acknowledge that all this is even taking place, because so far they don't seem like they're that worried about it, which is simultaneously worrying but at the same time comforting, strangely. Anyway, if I can think of anything else, I'll be sure to let you all know. Till next time, guys, take care and peace. I hope you have a better one. Hey fellas, you liked the video today? Hope so. How about you just go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe for more, or I'm sending an army of Andrew Tate clones to your house after school. Catch y'all later. Peace.